Hope you enjoyed Into the Wets, a wild Atlantic journey on some very wet weather. Whoa, buddy. But I hope you enjoyed that adventure. We're back on the classic Bullet 500 Daisy Bell. Undid the modifications. But what were the reasons for modifying the bike into the Super Bullet 500 Honda CB500X edition? Well, all jokes aside, originally was going to take the Bullet on the trip, Daisy, but unfortunately she started acting up. Oh, it's starting to rain. She started acting the gowl. I was driving home one day and she just started sputtering and bucking like a bronco. Who's this? Hi, buddy. She started sputtering and knocking back and forth like a bronco. I couldn't really get above 50 kilometers an hour. And it just seemed like, oh no, is this the end? Have I gone too far? Have I done too much? Have I not looked after you enough? So I trundled her back home at 50 kilometers an hour, all the while stopping and restarting, and probably should have just called a van or something like that. But I was like, look, we'll get as far as we can get to minimize the distance I need to get a van. Did get all the way home now. Thank God. So Dad took a look at the bike, and there were several issues with her. Her fuel line had kicked over, so we fixed that. Wonder, is that it? She started up, started going fine, idling fine, and then once at a bit of speed she started sputtering again and doing this buck and bronco nonsense. So that wasn't it. The throttle cable, there's supposed to be two, but I guess one sends the throttle and one receives the throttle, as in when you push it forward, one is to pull it back and one is to push it forward. One of them has snapped. It's still snapped, the other one works. Like it's a, I don't know, would you call it a redundancy feature or something like that? I'm not an engineer, I wouldn't know. But it's still working fine, so it wasn't that. But we have a spare one of that, finally arrived. I sent for it in France before, sent for it in France before the trip down the Royal Atlantic Way. Also, welcome back to Kilkenny again. So we tried that with the throttle cable. Oh no, we didn't try that with the throttle cable. Dad also ordered a new coil for the spark plug, and that is what it was. So the old one had just given up the ghost, so it would sort of fire a couple of times. Hi, buddy. No? Okay. It would sort of fire a couple of times and then it wouldn't fire, and it was just really poor experience on the poor bike. So I tried replacing the spark plug first and that wasn't it, so it was the coil. Once that finally got replaced, she stopped acting the maggot. And she's been running fine since, if not slightly better. I guess it had been sort of shot for a while and then finally gave up the ghost that time I was driving back home. So that's why I had to take the Honda on the Wet Atlantic Way trip. But you can't keep Daisy down, especially when you have my dad, who's very patient and looks after her. So she's back in action. Still need to put the new throttle cable on her, but other than that, I think she's running pretty well. I mean, we led the day today with Uncle Steve, leaving them in the dust, the two of them. They could have overtaken me if they wanted to, but it's nice to know she's enough power to keep up with the rest of them, you know? At least on 80 kilometer, 100 kilometer an hour roads, not a bother to her. Beyond that, you're asking a bit much of the old girl. But she's still running well. Don't exactly have any trips planned this summer on the bike. Things are busy these days with this and that. But things are busy for good reasons, so nothing to complain about. Don't think I really have much more to say beyond that. Oh my god, look at that dog. Beautiful. Don't think I have really much more to say than that, so that's the update as to why I took this bike. Just in retrospective, that trip, places we went to were so nice, but the weather really makes or breaks a tour in my opinion. And it was back in Easter, so the weather was, the week before we left, it was like 2 weeks of unprecedented sunshine and heat waves, and late 20s temperature, which is very unusual for Ireland in April. Unfortunately, the week of the trip it turned to rain, wet and misery, so that was unfortunate, but turned to rain, wet and misery, so that was unfortunate, but are we gonna get through? Nope. Turned to rain, wet, it turned to rain, wet and cold, and it was just, at least in Europe when I was on the bike, it rained some days and that sucked, but you got through it, and the next day would always generally be hot and sunny, so you would dry off fairly quickly, whereas this was cold and wet and unrelenting cold and wet. So second your gear is cold and you still have another 4 days of the trip to do, it kind of takes the morale out of you a little bit. So unfortunately the place we went was nice and the company was good, but the weather just not cooperating really took the fun out of it for me personally, and I'm glad little Daisy Bell wasn't on it. Daisy Bell normal edition, not special Honda CB500X modified Bullet Daisy edition. Stupid joke. She probably would have handled it, but it wouldn't be necessary to put her through that ringer, you know, so I was glad to have the Honda CB500X for that. But yeah, put on that wet gear, it took like a couple of weeks for it after the trip to actually dry out fully, just because we had no hot weather and didn't want to put it in the tumble dryer because I don't think that's particularly good for motorcycle garments. But hopefully another trip soon. Hopefully now another trip soon. Don't think Daisy's touring days are quite fully behind her yet, but I'm gonna vouch for doing them in pretty much guaranteed dry weather. But hopefully we'll get back to France again, or Germany, or Austria, or somewhere like that. She's done before. I'm sure she can do it again. Maybe a bit of TLC beforehand, but right now she's running like a dream, as she always do. Passed my driving test for the car, not for the bike. Don't know if anyone was keeping track, but like I think 2 or 3 years ago I had a video where I was ringing my driving instructor, or she rang during it to organise the lessons. So the conclusion to that video, I think I was in Carlo at the time, is that I eventually did pass. Now I won't go into what happened on the test, but if you ever meet me in person, ask me. It was an interesting one. I'll just say there was an incident. But all till the end well I passed, so happy days. Nothing beats driving the motorbike though. Car's handy, but this is where my heart is. Anyways, I think that's all I got for you. So bye from me and Daisy for now, and we'll see you soon in the future for hopefully something interesting. Bye.